Later this morning at 9:30, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals is going to hear the challenge against Illinois and local gun and magazine bans. We'll definitely be tuning in, but you need to know all of the background going into it. Good morning. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. We've been tracking this even before it passed and was enacted by Governor J.B. Pritzker. If you recall, and you can search back into the archives of Bishop on Air, the YouTube page, and you could see all of the arguments there were in crafting this legislation over 5 separate hearings where they mostly heard from gun violence victims, and then they allotted some time for opponents of the measure, where the opponents were talking about the Bruin decision out of the U.S. Supreme Court last year that really changed how courts are to evaluate challenges of laws as to whether they violate the Second Amendment. So, January 10th of this year, Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the Protect Illinois Communities Act, PICA, which bans more than 170 semi-automatic pistols, shotguns, and rifles, including the AR-15 platform. So you've got the ban on the firearms. You also had a ban on the magazines of more than 15 rounds for handguns and more than 10 rounds for rifles. Plus, there was a registry that's required for individuals who owned firearms before January 10th to register those banned weapons with the Illinois State Police starting October 1st with the deadline of January 1st. Also in that measure, it allows for Illinois State Police each year, and this is interesting, we don't talk about this enough, but it's obviously part of the measure. October 1st of each year, if this law is upheld, state police can change the list of which firearms are considered banned. So that list could change if, again, this measure is upheld. But you have a requirement under penalty of law to register your firearms by January 1st of 2024. So the statute was enacted. The governor signed it. It went into effect immediately. And then you had all the lawsuits starting to be filed. The first one filed was in state court from Thomas Magg, his client Langley. They filed it in Crawford County. That was then transferred from state court to federal courts. And then you had other state court challenges, in particular from attorney Thomas DeVore, who was able to secure thousands of temporary restraining orders against the state from enforcing the law on his clients. Thousands of clients and gun stores across the state that, to my knowledge, still have a temporary restraining order in place in state court. And that's after multiple lawsuits in Effingham and White County. And then you had the Illinois court case that was brought by State Representative Dan Calkins in Macon County. They got the lower court there to essentially say, it's unconstitutional. Then they immediately bumped it up to the Illinois Supreme Court. That's after the appellate court said that the plaintiffs were likely to advance on the merits in the DeVore case, which is very similar to the Calkins case. So the Calkins case went right to the Illinois Supreme Court. We're still waiting on an outcome from there. But those are the state court cases. That's not what's happening today. Today is the federal cases, and you had 4 plaintiffs groups in the Southern District that filed a Second Amendment challenge, and those cases were consolidated, and Judge Stephen McGlynn, he issued a preliminary injunction against the law in April, but that preliminary injunction only lasted 6 days because the state went to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals and they requested a stay on that injunction, and they received that stay while the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals wrapped in those Southern District cases with cases from the Northern District that are challenging not just Illinois' gun and magazine ban, but also challenging the gun and magazine ban on local levels in Cook County, Chicago, and Naperville. So all of these cases, right, different outcomes. The Southern District gave a preliminary injunction. Northern District judges sided with the gun and magazine bans. 7th Circuit lumped all of those cases together, and that's what's going to be heard today at 9:30. And if you recall, we talked about this earlier, you can find the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals YouTube channel simply by going to their website. All right, and then just walk through this with you. So you go to the Google, just search 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, you click on their website, you go to oral arguments, and under there you'll see oral argument videos. It's a little misleading because it's not really videos, it's just audio. But if you go there and you'll find oral arguments, streaming arguments, YouTube channel, new, you click there, and then it'll take you to the YouTube channel. Now, note, all right, 9:30 this morning is when it happens, the hearing. You've got the homepage, there's nothing there. Don't let that detract you. You've got the live link you've got to go to. That's where you'll see the live video pop up at about 9:30. So if you really want to be on top of it, of course, it'll be archived on their YouTube channel. But if you want to be on top of it, I would go there about 9:20 and just hit refresh over and over again until you get that live link, and it'll pop up about 9:30, and you can tune in there. So again, that's what's happening today. All right, coming up, we'll review some of what the gun control advocates have to say. You've got statements from every town, and apparently they're going to be holding some kind of rally in Chicago today, supporting more gun control. You've got even Senator Dick Durbin with a statement he released. So we'll go through some of that, and we'll also, again, revisit the arguments that we expect to hear in the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals this morning. So stay tuned. All here with WMAY. I'm Greg Bishop. With Bishop on Air, you can find me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow, whatever you got to do. Stay up to date on all of this and more. So the state's gun ban and magazine ban and the bans in Cook, Chicago, Naperville going to be challenged today in the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals for the U.S. federal courts. And here's what's also interesting is it's going to be a panel of 3 judges from our understanding, and we are not going to know the 3 judges on that panel until they open up. So we'll obviously be paying close attention to that and what kinds of proclivities these various judges have when it comes to the Second Amendment. We're going to get one of the judges that, for instance, helped consolidate these cases and kept the stay in place, Judge Easterbrook. We shall see. But obviously, that's a big unknown in how that plays out today. But really, just encapsulating some of the arguments here. The arguments from the states and from local governments has been that semi-automatic weapons that they banned are dangerous and unusual, and that the weapons are only used by criminals. They're not legitimate for self-defense. And they also say recent mass shootings means that they have to ban these things. So that's the argument from the defendants in this case. The plaintiffs say the Bruen decision and the Heller decision from the U.S. Supreme Court essentially spells out that you cannot ban commonly owned firearms. And there are millions and millions of AR-15s, for example, that are commonly owned, let alone all of the handguns that take more than 15-round clips, 15-round magazines. There are millions of those, and a commonly owned threshold's like only 250,000 or something from previous Supreme Court precedent. So the plaintiffs say you can't ban commonly owned firearms, and they also point to the New York State Rifle Association v. Bruen decision from the U.S. Supreme Court last year that says that you have to, courts have to evaluate the text, history, and tradition of the Second Amendment when they're evaluating whether or not laws violate the Constitution's Second Amendment right. So before all of this, we've got the hearing at 9:30, and we'll be watching that and reviewing that for you Friday morning. But I want to show you also what some of the gun control groups have to say. So let's go over and check some of these news releases. This came from Everytown, and they say Beavis v. City of Naperville, what you need to know. The 7th Circuit Court of Appeals set to hear oral arguments in the case in Chicago today. How the court decides will determine whether or not Illinois' law to restrict assault weapons, they say, and large capacity magazines will stand. Here's what you need to know. What's the case about? Well, Beavis centers around the Second Amendment challenge. The state of Illinois' recently enacted law restricting assault weapons and large capacity magazines. They go on to talk about what's the legal precedence in the case like this. Beavis marks the first new challenge to prohibition of assault weapons and large capacity magazines to reach federal appeals court since the Supreme Court's decision in Bruen last year. Prior to the court's decision in Bruen, appellate courts, including the 7th Circuit, repeatedly ruled that restrictions on assault weapons and large capacity magazines magazines are constitutional. So they seem to indicate, Bruen could change that. They go on to talk about what's happening in the Seventh Circuit if it strikes down Illinois' assault weapons ban. If it's unconstitutional from the Seventh Circuit, Illinois' law as well as similar local ordinances would be invalidated, putting the safety of Illinois residents at risk, they say. So they go on to give some more background on all of that. Are 3 other cases pending on assault weapons or large capacity magazines? Yes, across the nation. You've got cases, they say, in the First Circuit, Third Circuit, Fourth Circuit, D.C. Circuit, all pending right now. But could the Supreme Court's decision in Bruen impact the decision? Yes, they say. Bruen marks the first new case surrounding restrictions on assault weapons and large capacity magazines to reach a federal appeals court, Beavis rather, since last year's Bruen decision unleashed Second Amendment chaos, they say. So again, you've got the group Everytown putting this out. And also you've got March for Our Lives. They talk about how, here's a news release they put out. They're going to have a rally for the gun control efforts today. Same day, the Seventh Circuit set to hear oral arguments. Illinois Communities Act, the Protect Illinois Communities Act, which bans assault rifles, large capacity magazines, switches, and the deadliest forms of semi-automatic pistols, they say. So they're actually going to be rallying outside of the court at 9:30 this morning. And then you've got statements from Senator Dick Durbin, who says that he met with March 4th, a group that apparently is reminiscing of the Highland Park mass shooting. But he goes on to talk about how, since the horrific mass shooting at a 4th of July parade, the gunman scared a community from a lifetime, shooting more than 80 rounds in 60 seconds. Goes on to say mass shootings are a uniquely American experience, and it doesn't have to be this way. So again, these are just some of the statements from gun control advocates leading up to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals hearing this case challenging Illinois' gun and magazine ban. It looks like we do have a phone call coming in, and you can always chime in at 217-629-7970. Again, 217-629-7970.
How does that work?
Good morning. You're on WMAY. Real quick, please.
Oh, yeah. They had in 1934, they banned the machine gun. You can ban certain classes of weapons. It's been done in this country. There's a tradition of that, you could say.
Well, but that tradition does not go back to the Second Amendment, and I'm going to have to counter that with you can still go out and get a machine gun, talk to a federal firearms licensee holder, and they go through a process. You can still get a machine gun.
You cannot own those. The ordinary person cannot go out and buy one.
You can go, but again, you can get a permit to do so through federal licensing. You can go over to Las Vegas and rent these in a shooting range, so they're not banned. Again, okay, all right. So, text history and tradition, right? So you have that is a major issue that the defendants are going to have to try to prove that there is a text history and tradition all the way back to the Second Amendment, not 1930. All the way back to the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment is a civil constitutional right, an inalienable right. And it's something that since 1792 has said the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So that's the issue at hand here. And text history and tradition, I don't think only allows to go back to 1935 or whenever. So you're going to have these arguments spelled out in court. But while we're talking about challenges in court, I do want to update you on the latest from Thomas Magg. If you recall, the state of Illinois also passed a law, and the governor enacted, that prohibits individuals from suing the state over constitutional challenges outside of Cook County or Sangamon County, right? So if there's any other challenges to, say, gun laws in the state, then you've got, the issue of where they can file suit. They can't file it down in Southern Illinois. They got to come to Sangamon or Cook County. But Thomas Magg, after the bill was signed and enacted, he filed a suit in Madison County challenging the state's FOID card on constitutional grounds as count one, and then count two was challenging this law in particular about limiting the venues. Well, earlier this week, and looking at the docket from the Madison County Court, in the case Myers Gary versus Kelly Brandon, you've got the proof of service being delivered to Brendan Kelly. So that case is advancing, and that was interesting to see pop up earlier this week. Just wanted to update you on that particular issue as well. All right, 217-629-7970. Got a couple of calls coming in. I want to get to them before the break. Real quick, good morning. You're on WMAY.
Morning, Bishop.
Hey.
You know, I heard earlier today, I forget what 2 states it was, they want to outlaw or ban the drug that the kids are taking to basically turn them, they're transitioning. And they said they can't do that because it's a constitutional right. But yet we're taking our guns away, which is a constitutional right.
Yeah, there's a lot of comparisons you can make to that, with one side saying, oh, we need to have the constitutional rights to this, that, and the other, which isn't spelled out in the Constitution. But something like firearms, that very much is spelled out in the Constitution as a fundamental right. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
I'll make this quick. I believe any automatic weapon made prior to 1986 you can legally own. You just have to pay a $200 ATF tax. A Gatling gun, which is almost like a machine gun but hand cranked, is not considered a fully automatic weapon. You can own one of those as well, which is an ATF tax.
Well, and Freedom's Steel on YouTube joining in the chat, and he says that caller's wrong. 30-plus states allow private ownership of machine guns. And Todd Vandermeide is very knowledgeable in gun laws across the country. Appreciate the call. All right, so it's going to be a big day. Of course, 9:30 is when that happens. You should be able to follow along live on the YouTube stream for the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. We will definitely be talking about this and getting reaction to it all day tomorrow as well. So that's the latest in the twists and turns of the ban on semi-automatic weapons and magazines over certain capacities in the state of Illinois. And where it goes from here, it could be months before there's a ruling. And is there going to be a ruling that blocks the law pending appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court so that people are safe from having to register their firearms come January 1st? That's the big question. And everybody's going to be holding their breath waiting for that ruling to be released. All right, follow along with me anytime, anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air. Bishop on Air. All right, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Bishop on Air.